Welcome to the session, and this session will be on types of production costs. So let's deep dive into the topic. So as you can see, there are a lot of figures in front of you. Let's suppose that Paul is a farmer, and obviously he has to incur some expenses in order to perform the farming that he has to do. So when we talk about Paul's cost of farming, we have three different kind of costs related to it. First one being the accounting cost, second one being the opportunity cost, and third one being the externality cost. In accounting cost, all the costs are recorded. Whatever Paul will purchase in order to perform farming, he will record it into the accounting cost, right? Let's suppose that he has to purchase seeds and he purchased seeds for $20,000. In the same way, he has purchased fertilizer. He has purchased fertilizer for $3,000. In the same way, he has purchased fuel, and in fact, he has taken a loan from the bank to perform farming. So, interest on that bank loan and also the various equipments that he has, for example, tractor or any other machine. Obviously, due to wear and tear, due to its usage, there will be fall in its value. That is known as depreciation. So depreciation of equipment we take into account. Let's say it is $5,000. So his total accounting cost is $48,000, right? So this is all the money that he has paid in order to do farming, right? And it in along with the money that he has paid interest on bank loan as well, and he has also taken into consideration the depreciation on its equipment. So that is your total accounting cost. Now let's come to the second cost, which is the opportunity cost. Opportunity cost is very different from accounting cost. Opportunity cost is the next best alternatives benefit foregone. I will explain what I just said with the example. See, Paul, he is a farmer and he is performing farming. Now, let's suppose that if Paul was not doing farming and he had a job, he could do a job, a proper 9 to 5 job he can do. And he could, if he would have been doing that job, he could have made $30,000 as salary. So this is the benefit he has foregone in order to perform farming, right? And whatever the money Paul is using for farming, if he was not performing farming, then that money could have been invested somewhere. So let's suppose that invested money gives him return of $12,000. So the total opportunity cost is 30,000 plus 12,000. 30,000 being the foregone salary and return on equity capital. That is the foregone return on equity capital. So you get, when you add $30,000 with $12,000, you get 40,000, 42,000, sorry. So that is the opportunity cost. Then every economic activity has a externality cost. It is usually the cost to the environment. So while performing farming, the pollution damage is, let's say, $5,000. So the total social cost would be accounting cost plus opportunity cost plus externality cost. It comes through to be equal to $95,000. As you can see how we have calculated the total cost. We have taken $48,000, which is our accounting cost, plus $42,000, which is our opportunity cost, plus $5,000, which is our externality cost. So this is the total cost, $95,000. Now let's talk about the production function. Just have a look at this piece of data. And this piece of data belongs to corn production. Now, in order to produce corn, a lot of nitrogen fertilizer is used so that the farmer can grow more and more corn in his limited real estate, his limited farming space. So over here, what you can see is this is the quantity of nitrogen fertilizer, bags per acre. So for 1 acre of land, how much of nitrogen fertilizer has been used? That is your data that is being given over here. And on the right hand side, you can see corn yield. That is and corn yield has been measured in bushels per acre. Bushels is, when you take the corn out and put it in a container, right? So that's your bushels. So as you can see over here in this piece of data, that the quantity of nitrogen fertilizer is increasing as we go down in the table, right? So we are using more and more nitrogen fertilizer. And as the nitrogen fertilizer is increasing, the corn yield is also increasing, right? And it makes sense as well, because if nitrogen fertilizer is something which is very essential for growing corn, then obviously if the more and more nitrogen fertilizer you will use, the more corn yield will be there. So that makes a lot of sense. So this is the graphical representation of what we have just studied. This is the corn production function. On the vertical axis, we have the corn yield, and on the horizontal axis, we have the nitrogen fertilizer. So as you can see, as the nitrogen fertilizers are increasing, the corn yield is also increasing. And that again, obviously it makes sense, right? Now let's look at the same piece of data that we have looked. This piece of data, corn production function. This was table 2. Have a look at table 3. Again, we have the quantity of nitrogen fertilizer, which is increasing as we go down in the table. Corn yield, which is also increasing again as there is an increase in quantity of nitrogen fertilizer. There is increase in the corn yield as we go down in the table. Now a new term has been introduced over here, which is the marginal product. What is marginal product? The marginal product is the increase in total production by using one additional, one bag of additional nitrogen fertilizer. So we can over here say that the quantity of nitrogen fertilizer increased from 0 to 1. So we are employing one additional nitrogen fertilizer, and because of that additional nitrogen fertilizer, the corn yield is increasing from 100 to 115, right? So that is your marginal product. When you increase the input by 1 unit, so whatever the increase in the total production is there because of use of that one additional unit of input, that is your marginal product. Over here, some calculations has been done as well. You can have a look at it. Here's a mistake actually. This is 100. See, when the quantity of nitrogen fertilizer was 0, we were not using any nitrogen fertilizer, we were still producing 100 bushels per acre. Now, what we did is we started using nitrogen fertilizer, and because of that, the corn yield increased from 100 to 115. So what will be the marginal product in this case? Marginal product is the increase in total production due to application of one more additional unit of input. Our input is nitrogen fertilizer. So when we go from 0 to 1, our corn yield increase from 100 to 115. So if we subtract 100 from 115, we get the figure of 15. This is your marginal product, right? Now, let's suppose that Paul decides that he will use 2 bags per acre of nitrogen fertilizer. And as a result of that, the corn yield bushels per acre increase from 115 to 127. What is the marginal product? 127 minus 115. 127 minus 115 is equal to 12, right? So I hope now you have a good grasp of what exactly is marginal product. Now we are going to look at how does this marginal product behave. That is very important to be understood. Now look at this graph. We have two graphs over here. This is the total product curve. That is the total output with constant and increasing marginal returns. Let me explain it. Look at this graph over here, the first graph from the left hand side, which is the total product curve with constant marginal returns. So what is the meaning of it? It means that as we will keep on employing more and more quantity of input, the quantity of output will increase at the very same pace at which the marginal returns is, or the total production will increase. Let me again repeat it so that I can make it more simpler for you to understand. Over here we have quantity of variable input. So we are increasing, as you can see, as we grow from left to right, the quantity of variable input is increasing and the quantity of output is also increasing. So it clearly says that when you increase the quantity of variable input, you will increase the quantity of output. And since this particular diagram or graph is the result of constant marginal returns, that is, the marginal return is constant, neither it is increasing, neither it is decreasing. So we will get a graph like this, right? Let's now move to the right side. Total product curve with increasing marginal returns. What does it mean? It means that when we employ, let's say, when we increase the quantity of variable input by 5% and the quantity of output increases by 10%, that is your increasing marginal return, right? In the graph on the left hand side, if we are increasing the quantity of variable input by 5%, our quantity of output is also increasing by 5%. So that is constant marginal return. Now, increasing marginal return is, let's suppose if we increase the quantity of variable input by 5%, let's say the quantity of output increases by 10%. That is your increasing marginal returns. So this figure is showing you all the possible scenarios of marginal returns. Marginal returns can be increasing, they can be constant, or they can be decreasing, right? So on the vertical axis, we have quantity of output, that is our total units of output, and on the horizontal axis we have quantity of the variable input. So when we increase the quantity of variable input up to a point, the marginal returns are increasing. That means that if you increase the variable input by 5%, quantity of output will increase by 7, 10, 15, any other percentage that you can take, but it will be more than 5%, right? Then we come to the range of constant marginal returns. That is, you are increasing quantity of variable input by 5%. You are increasing the quantity of output by 5% as well. And at last, we get range of decreasing marginal returns. The marginal returns are decreasing, which means that you are increasing the variable input by 5%, but quantity of output is increasing only by, let's say, 2%. So the quantity of output will increase, but at a slower pace than the quantity of variable input. Now, when we talk about cost and we talk about economics, then we are usually using three terminologies related to cost. First one is the fixed cost, second one is the variable cost, and third is the marginal cost. Fixed cost, as the name suggests, doesn't matter how much of quantity of nitrogen fertilizer you use, the cost which will not change is the fixed cost, right? So this is your fixed cost. As you can see, it is constant throughout, $500, right? And then we have variable cost. Variable cost is $15 per bag of fertilizer. That means if Paul increases or Paul buys one bag of fertilizer, it costs him $15. So that is your variable cost. So when Paul does not purchase any nitrogen fertilizer, obviously the variable cost is zero. When Paul purchases one bag of nitrogen fertilizer, then the variable expense is 15. Why 15? Because that is the cost of one bag of nitrogen. Now, when he purchases two bags of nitrogen, his variable cost will be 15 multiplied by 2. In the same way, if he will purchase 3 bags, it will be 15 multiplied by 3, which will be 45. So that is your variable cost, right? As you are increasing your input, your output is increasing, and then there are some expenses which are increasing. So that is your variable cost, right? Fixed cost will remain the same, doesn't matter how much of nitrogen fertilizer you use, and it does not also depend on the corn yield, right? This will remain constant, $500. But what can be increased along with this fixed cost? Along with the fixed cost, we can, if we are using nitrogen fertilizer, then obviously Paul has to purchase nitrogen fertilizer, and if one bag of nitrogen fertilizer is of $15, then we can easily calculate its total variable cost. The last column we have is the total cost, which is nothing but the fixed cost plus the variable cost. So over here in this particular figure, you can see the total cost curve for corn. The total cost curve. What is included in total cost? Fixed cost plus variable cost is equal to total cost, right? So over here in this graph, you can see total cost is on the vertical axis, and in the horizontal axis we have quantity of corn. So this graph which you're seeing is the total cost curve, that is variable cost plus fixed cost, right? Now you know what is marginal cost, right? Now there is a certain behavior of marginal cost which we are going to learn. Marginal cost keeps on changing as we keep on changing our total units of production. This data you have seen before, right? Quantity of nitrogen fertilizers and corn yield. This is the same data that we have been working on. This is the data related to farming done by Paul, right? You know what marginal return is, right? The increase in corn yield as the result of 1 unit increase in nitrogen fertilizer. Now what we are doing in this particular table is we are introducing one more thing, that is cost of additional nitrogen. And what is the cost of additional nitrogen? It will remain the constant because one bag of nitrogen is costing $15, right? So cost of additional nitrogen will remain the constant. And the marginal cost, how we are marginal cost, which is dollars per bushel of corn. What we are doing over here is we are dividing cost of additional nitrogen by marginal return of additional nitrogen, right? So this is the value we get. This is the marginal cost. And how we have calculated the marginal cost? We have simply taken the cost of additional nitrogen and divided it by the marginal return of additional nitrogen. This is the way you calculate marginal cost. So in this figure, what you can see, we have two graphs. First of all, let me explain to you the marginal cost curve. The marginal cost will decrease, then it will become constant, and then it will start to increase. That means that if you start to employ more and more units of the variable input, first of all, the marginal cost will decrease, then it will become constant, and then it will increase. And in the graph on top, you have quantity of output and you have total cost, right? So when the marginal cost is decreasing, what will happen? The quantity of output will increase at a faster rate than the total cost. When there will be constant marginal cost, then the quantity of output will increase at the same pace at which the total cost is increasing. And last, we have the increasing marginal cost. How it will impact the total cost? The quantity of output will be increasing but at a lower rate in comparison to the total cost. So this is the kind of graph you get if you take into consideration the marginal cost. Now, when we talk about long run, see, one of the things is that when we talk about production, we can talk about two time frames, one being the short term, second one being the long term. In the short term, to increase the production, the company can increase only the variable input but cannot increase the fixed input. But in the long run, company can increase the variable input, also the fixed input. Let me explain it by an example. Let's say that you are in the business of manufacturing furniture, right? And you use wood for that. So and let's suppose you have 100 machines. You have 100 machines and you have 100 kg of wood that you will use to produce furniture. Now in the short term, the company can only increase the 100 kg of wood. They cannot increase the machines, right, in a short term. So in the short term, only the wood is increasing, not the machines. But in the long run, the total kg of wood is also increasing and the number of machine is also increasing. So that is the difference between long run and short run. In this graph, you can see two terms, one being economies of scale and second one being the diseconomies of scale. Let's discuss them one by one. When we talk about economies of scale, what does it mean? It means that when a company starts to increase its production, there are some factors which will reduce the average cost per unit because there are economies of scale. For example, when you were a small company, you used to purchase 100 kg of wood at, let's say, at at 2 rupees per kg. This was the rate. Now you are increasing your production. So what do? You increase the use of wood. So you have to purchase more wood. Let's say now you purchase 200 kg of wood, right? Now, because your purchase quantity has doubled, so he may give it to you at rupees 1.5 per kg. So this is an example of economies of scale. You increase your production, and to increase the production, what do? You purchase more and more raw material, but since you're purchasing more raw material, the vendor or the supplier of that raw material is giving you a discount. So in that way, average cost per unit will decline, right? So as the quantity of output will keep on increasing, the long run average cost will keep on decreasing. Then we have constant returns to scale, which means that if we increase the quantity of output, right, that will not increase the long run average cost. The long run average cost will be constant, it will not change. But after a certain point, the company becomes so big that it becomes difficult to manage that company, and they are known as diseconomies of scale. When a company crosses the maximum efficient scale, diseconomies of scale comes into action. Now the company is very large, it has a lot of departments. Now there may be lack of coordination among departments that may lead to increase in long run average cost, right? So when there are economies of scale, the long run average cost will fall, and when there are diseconomies of scale, the long run average cost will increase. So I hope now you have a good idea of marginal cost, economies of scale, diseconomies of scale, and some of the other concepts that we have discussed. Thanks a lot for your time.